So I remember I grew up with my grandparents, and they were immigrants to Canada, and so I had that very immigrant upbringing with them, and I always remember I used to complain a lot about my grandmother's cooking as a kid. I used to, oh, it's bland, right? So my grandparents are from Holland, right? So not really known, the Dutch aren't really known for exciting food creations or whatever, right? Not like the French or the Italians or whatever. So I grew up kind of always complaining a bit about my grandma's cooking. And until I think I was about maybe 19 or so when I was living on my own, had an apartment on my own in town, and I went out to visit my grandparents. So living on my own and working at the time, I wasn't making huge money, so the money was tight, and so I was eating a lot out of a can, right? And so my grandparents invited me out, and so I went to go visit them, and I swear, my grandma's fried potatoes and shake and bake pork chops with green beans never tasted so good in my life. It was like, oh my God, I've missed this so much. So it really, the perspective on it, had changed for me at that point, right? And I really kind of came to understand that, my grandma cooked the way she cooked, and after being away from it for a while, I found I missed it, right? So, but one of the funny stories too is, so a few years later, I was dating a girl, and we were getting serious, and so we went out to visit my grandparents in Obed, and to have dinner, right? And so my grandma, made what was a fairly normal meal. I think probably boiled potatoes and again, some vegetable like corn or green beans or something like that, and I don't know what the meat was, whether it was fried hamburger or whatever, just the normal stuff that I grew up eating, right? And like I said, that I'd learned to appreciate when I didn't live at home anymore. And so me and this girlfriend are there, and we're having dinner, and I remember she kept saying to my grandma, "Oh my goodness," she said, "Oh, your potatoes taste so unique. I've never tasted this flavor before. What do you put in your boiled potatoes?" Right? And my grandma was like, "Oh, well, nothing fancy, just a little bit of salt, right?" And so this girlfriend's like, "Wow, that is so, I've never tasted anything like it," right? And she looked at me and she's like, "Wow, this is amazing." And I'm like, "Gosh, I don't know. The only thing I notice is they taste like they may be burned, boiled dry, which my grandma was notorious for boiling the potatoes dry." And sure enough, that was exactly the flavor that my girlfriend had never tasted before, that I was so used to. And for those of you who know, boiled potatoes when they've boiled dry, it's a flavor that it's not real pleasant. And yeah, but she had never experienced that, and she thought it was so delicious. And it was just kind of a humorous thing. But like I said, all this stuff, it just kind of really gives me an example of the perspective of these things, right? So, I grew up with the same cooking and didn't appreciate it until I moved on my own, and all of a sudden going back home and tasting, the food I grew up with, all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, I missed that, right? And so that's kind of what happens to us in life sometimes, I think. So